All right, it's time for the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg, and this one is sponsored by Aragon. Did you know Aragon helmets are lined with an antimicrobial material? Yep, the inner liner gives you odor resistance, dirt resistance, and antimicrobials that you love so much. So you can stay fresher longer and enjoy a very comfortable ride in the latest Aragon helmet. Check out AragonAmericas.com. Pick what you like, and then get down to the dealership, try it on to make sure it fits properly, and then pick your color. AragonAmericas.com. Alrighty, and with that, we'll bring in Jason Pridmore. Jason, what's going on, man?
Tired, G-Dub. Worn out, tired. I know you're feeling the same, but we got to, crazy last weekend for us at MotoAmerica, and got some MotoGP, World Superbikes back in action. A lot going on still, so it's great. But I'm back out, I think, to Chuckwalla this weekend. CVMA starts out there, so yeah, it doesn't stop.
Yeah, I'm on a plane first thing in the morning to College Station, Texas, to compete in the last USA Archery tournament of the year. That's a national tournament, so I got to get my stuff together for that one, dude, for sure.
Yep.
Been off the bow a while, been struggling a bit, so we'll see. It's that's archery. I'm sure golf is the same way. You just have these weeks where you're just like really, really good, and then all of a sudden it falls off and you're searching for it,
Yeah, I can say that racing was never really like that. That's like a constant. Like when you ride decent pretty much all the time. It's very rarely did I ever feel like I got off a bike and went, man, and just thought I'm riding horrible. But yeah, those other two sports, I haven't got to play any golf this year really because of my body and just been little issues with obviously my leg, but my wrist, and just been a struggle year. So it's just been a bit of a downer a little. So I'm trying to get myself healthy and then maybe have surgery on my leg here soon. And try to go into 2020 with some new mojo.
Yeah, I know. Can you believe talking about 2020? It's not quite October yet, but I know you can't wait for the new year. But speaking of still 2019, let's go ahead and breeze over MotoGP, because normally we get pretty deep into a MotoGP conversation, but we had a couple back-to-back, Jay. And let's start with the Premier Class, because if you look at MotoGP, it wasn't as exciting as we normally see. It still was good racing in some of the classes and back in the field. But in the MotoGP race itself, Marc Marquez won that thing 4.8 seconds over to Vizioso and Jack Miller. Maverick Vinales finished fourth, Quartararo in fifth. Then you had Crutchlow, Espargaro, Valentino all the way back in eighth. Alex Rins, who had a very interesting race, in ninth. Nakagami in 10th, and on back through the field. So Aragon seems to be one of those tracks now where Marc Marquez is just starting to rack them up like the Codas or Saxon Ring kind of a thing.
Saxon Ring, yeah.
Yeah. What'd you think?
Hey, when you say 4.8 seconds, Greg, it wasn't even that close.
I know.
It might as well have been 30. It was a joke. Nobody rivals this kid. He's too good.
Didn't he have like 1 second or little over 1 second after the first lap? You know what I mean?
It was just gone. And I saw some really interesting quotes this weekend from different riders. Like even Crutchlow was like, if you put Mark on an Aprilia or a KTM, he's putting it on the podium. There's no question in his mind. It's just, he's just that good. So I think that when you look at it, we're just in a time right now where there's no rivalry for him. People are going to step up here and there. You're going to see certain, horses for courses, but Dovi ends up second after a horrible qualifying. And him and Miller both. I mean, the Ducati was very fast, obviously down the straights. Marquez had already cleared out pretty much by the time Dovi had got to where he was, but he wasn't going to catch Marquez anyways. The guy I felt really bad for was Vinales, Greg, because he rode really well, but he was a bit of a sitting duck there at the end of the race for the two Ducatis that went flying by him, and even Quartararo. Quartararo was really good this weekend again. I mean, he's proven to show himself that he's in that top five now, obviously all the time, but there was just no match for the guy that won the race.
And the problem is that Honda keeps getting that bike a little bit better. So it's getting even worse. If there was anything that you could have identified at the very beginning of the season, not so much with Marquez and his riding, but with the way he had to ride the Honda, that's now gone. It's not working great for Crutchlow, obviously. It's not working great for Lorenzo, who finishes 20th I know he's still hurting a bit, but even, Bradley Smith filling in on the Aprilia got, beat Lorenzo. So
that's insane.
Yeah.
That's so insane to me.
And we're not taking anything away from Bradley, but he's just not full-time GP anymore.
No, that's the whole point. You got a factory Honda finishing behind a guy who's doing 5 rides in a year. So nothing taken away. I mean, when you look at it too, it's now people are coming out and saying that the bike obviously is built around Marquez, and Crutchlow's coming out as he always does and just talks about how difficult the bike is to ride, which is true, obviously, because, well, it's true for everybody else except for one guy. Marquez just figures it out and how to do it. I think that I don't know, Greg. It's just got to be so frustrating. I don't even know why Lorenzo's out there.
Yeah, I don't know either. And there's talk now that Marquez is so good and the package he's riding is so good. It started to creep out that, someone was speculating Valentino Rossi's thinking about retirement. Lorenzo's thinking about retirement. Like, the talk now is a mass exodus of superstars that are going to leave Marc Marquez basically by himself, and by himself. And you think, how old is Marquez now? 27? Is that right?
26. Yeah, I think he's 26.
So what do you think? He's got at least 8 good years. Luck goes his way. And we've seen riders do this before. I mean, you have McDougall, who won 5 in a row, and there was nothing really stopping him. There was no one stepping up when his reign, just a big accident, really stopped him. So other than Father Time catching up to Valentino Rossi, he was one that you thought there was no end in sight. But man, it looks scary right now for MotoGP in terms of, if you have Valentino Rossi go do all those Rossi Fumi, do they bail?
Where do they go, right?
Where do they go, yeah.
Who steps up? I agree with you. And when you say Marquez has 8 years, Rossi's 40. So, really 8 turns into 10. But I think it really depends on how motivated he is. I do feel somewhere along the line that it'll be a bike switch that'll motivate him to go do something else or go somewhere else. I'm really starting to believe that he's the best I've ever seen. Like, I had this discussion just at the beginning of the year about who's the best. And I know that Rossi's done it over a bunch of different motorcycles and things, and we've seen Rossi dominate like this, but this guy is just, I don't know, man. He's got the mentality. He's got the, he's kind of got the anger and he's got the smile, both kind of like Rossi had, right?
Yeah, just different times, Jason. You know what I mean?
You're right. It's hard to compare.
You can't compare Agostini to, McDougall to Valentino Rossi, to Correct. Wayne Rainey. Honestly, Wayne should have been in those conversations. His career was cut short, but he was on a run of 3 and definitely 4, that year. So
100%.
Yeah, it's the motorcycle matched with the rider. There are just certain times that we have seen, and some of them can be brief. Like, you have to look at Scott Russell in his career and his championship that he won. And, it was just one of those times where you had unbelievable rider, tire, just bike
paired
combination.
Up with the right team.
Yeah. And sometimes it lasts a season. Sometimes it lasts many years. And see, that's why I think Valentino Rossi's the best I've ever seen. Although I agree with you, Marquez is building such a case right now. And with lap times that you see and all the advancements, and it's just incredible and demoralizing for the rest of the field. It's at some point, Marquez is smart enough, though, I think, to know that if he goes out there and just wins race after race after race by 15, 20 seconds, that he's going to just be doing the entire MotoGP paddock a disservice,
It's so hard, though, as a competitor to think about that side of the reality. It never really creeps into your mind. You're not going into races thinking, man, if I win by 10 seconds, it's going to kill the sport, because that's what you're paid to do. You're paid to go out and win, and he does it. And we don't see him making big mistakes in races. I think the thing that just trips me out a little bit is that, Greg, this could easily have been 6 in a row. I mean, in 2015, when he didn't win, he theoretically, on paper, he had everything there to win, but he wasn't as mature of a rider then as he is the last 3 years. And so that, to me, really was the difference. He chose to get caught up in on-track activities he just didn't even need to be involved in. And he made some pretty key areas by tipping off and stuff. But had he been the rider, obviously it's easy to say, but had he been the rider in 15 that he is now, he'd be going on 6 championships in a row. And that's pretty incredible in this time, in this day, to be able to do that. I'll tell you one thing, I don't, watching that race, and I think it's a bit of an Aragon thing as well, but Aleix Espargaro was incredibly impressive, finishing only 10 seconds off the win on the Gresini Aprilia. And we always talk every weekend of why is Aprilia racing? It's the first time all year, maybe in 2 years, Greg, that I've sat back and gone, well, there's an Aprilia there. And if you looked at it going down the straight, it looked pretty fast. Iannone even had his best result. I think he finished 11th. I mean, Espargaro finished 13 seconds ahead of Rossi. But the Aprilia looked a lot better this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see if that development. I read an interesting interview with Iannone a couple of weeks ago talking about the development of the bike and the things they're doing and some of the stuff they have in store. And being able to use Iannone as kind of the lab rat who's come from other manufacturers and bringing some of the technology and philosophies that other people have told him about to Aprilia. So hopefully that'll make a difference for them.
Yeah, Bradley Smith has some, a bit of input in it. We talked about at the beginning of the year, they restructured a lot of stuff over there with Aprilia, and it's just going to take time. It does, and it's a hectic schedule. 19 races. They start April, they end in November. I mean, it's a crazy schedule, and of course, it's not getting any better. There's 20 next year, and what did you say last week? I think they're wanting to go to
22. They're trying to get to.
I heard even 24 eventually. Like that's the magic number. That is crazy. But
it is crazy. I mean, it is. And that's where, again, the burnout side of things might come into effect for a Marquez or somebody. I mean, when you win that many championships and you've got as much money in the bank as you'll ever need in your lifetime, where do you keep finding the motivation? Because as you get older, for some people it stays in there. But for others, once you start realizing that it's becoming really difficult, and you can't maybe win on the regular and you can't do things. That's why the Rossi thing to me is interesting, because I don't feel Rossi will ever win again anymore. I just think that there's too many guys. There's not just one or two or three. I mean, he's getting beat now by guys that, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you just thought that guy's never going to beat Rossi. And now that's starting to happen. On his day, he's great. On his day, he can lead. He can do well. But I just don't see that ever happening, Greg, where he's going to win again. It'll take a special type of race, I think, for it to happen,
a one-off race where he can
Correct.
really dig into his experience as well as his given speed. You know what I mean? Like, it's possible for him to win a race, but I see what you're saying. I don't see him winning a race. That's going to be unforeseen situation. Yeah.
Wasn't it like 3 years ago, Greg? We had I think we had 8 different winners, and Miller won at Assen in the rain, and there were 8 different winners. I just think that was a year that you're just not going to see that very often in MotoGP. It's too difficult. So, that'll be the kind of thing that'll be interesting with the burnout. You mentioned Rins. Really interesting race, wasn't it? I mean, he kind of took out Morbidelli right off the bat, gets the long lap loop, and kept fighting his way back and through, and ends up only 3 or 4 seconds off the back of Rossi at the end of it all. He just has a tendency to do that every now and then, doesn't he, Rins?
He does. At the beginning of the year in the podcast, remember when we had Chad Reed was coming on, and we talked at one episode about who do you think is going to be good for 2019, and I was like, Rins, and he was like, nah, he just doesn't have the maturity to fight for a championship, week in, week out, that type of thing. He kind of pulled back a little bit when we were still talking to Chad about when Rins won a race, but he still kind of held firm, and I would say that's kind of the case. Rins now, he's still fighting a motorcycle that's a little bit slower, so he's having to do it a lot more in the corner, so he doesn't have the weapon that Marquez does. He has the speed at times to race with Mark if the situation's correct, but the real thing comes down to what Marquez does, Jason, is he just puts it on the front row. He doesn't put himself in trouble early on in the race. He gets good starts to keep himself clean. He doesn't have to make desperate lunges, or he doesn't find himself around riders that he has to force the issue very often. And I think that's part of how you win championships. If you get around someone that you haven't been around very much, that may be having a good launch, and you got to force yourself by, that's when you start pinballing off of people, making desperate lunges, making mistakes, getting penalty laps, those types of things.
Yeah, the lunge that he made on Morbidelli was a big one. I mean, he came from a long way back and cleaned out Rins pretty well. And we've seen Marquez in the past, but like you say, Greg, making big lunges. I think the maturity side of it, he doesn't have a problem getting into a good fight every now and then, as we know. Both of those guys. I mean, I think Rins is kind of that quiet guy that nobody really expects to go throw it up the inside and do something like what had happened at Aragon. And he even admitted, he screwed up Morbidelli's race. So it was a bummer. But other than that, the racing was pretty boring. I got back to the hotel Sunday night after our weekend and tried to just catch a couple of the races. And I know your time was beyond crazy limited getting ready for the banquet and such. So I wasn't sure how much you were going to be able to watch. But I also, Greg, set up and watched the Moto2 race. And when I clicked on it and started watching that, and I do watch every one of them all the way through, it was a little bit of the same, but it was a little bit the same, a little bit different. But there was only one guy leading, and that was Brad Binder, and he wins by just under a second. And it really wasn't that close again. Like Binder got out front to a 2 second, 3 second lead. And really what ended up happening was a group behind of Navarro, Marquez, and Luca Marini. They were kind of tied together for most of the race, trying to sort out where they were going to finish. People were asking, might ask about Augusto Fernandez, who came in closest in the points and off a 2-race winning streak. He ended up crashing, Greg, on the very, very first lap, ends up getting credited with 22nd. But Navarro ends up second. Alex Marquez does a great job, ends up third. So that podium consistency is doing it for him. Luca Marini, fourth. Great to see Sam Lowe's finishing fifth. He got a little bit screwed up by Lecuona right off the bat, and it created that gap that you and I talk about so much. And Sam kept fighting back from that, but he ends up 5.6 off the back. Thomas Luthi was up front early, went backwards. He's sixth. Lecuona, Baldassari, Jorge Martin, Xavi Vierge end up the top 10. Then we had previous Mazzano second place finisher De Giantonia, Bulaga, Remy Gardner, Monzi, and Pasecki end up getting our final points. Did you get to catch any of this one?
No. I mean, other than some highlights here or there, I didn't get to catch that race. And after I saw those results for Moto 2 and Moto 3, the limited time I had, I wanted to see Moto 3. So and I did see the championship in Moto 2. Where Marquez now has, I believe it's 38 points on Jorge Navarro. So that it's crazy because the battle for second in the championship, you have Navarro at 175. Fernandez at 171, Luthi's at 169. Binder was able to get up to 160. But, it's like, so you have Alex Marquez way up there, and then you have like Baldassari, who obviously we thought was a championship contender early on, back in sixth place. But did you get to see what happened to our boy Joe Roberts? Because one of the things, looking at the results, I was like, okay, cool. We know that KTM came up with a new chassis and, they've been working on it. So KTM wins, speed up in second. And then all of a sudden it's Calex's, then a KTM, because Lecuona, like you said, he was in seventh place. We didn't see the next speed up until 11th place. And that was, Di Gianantonio. And I was like, wait a second, there's a couple of KTMs here in the top 10, solid, 3 of them. What happened to our boy? But Joe Roberts ended up 30th. So
he ended up falling off. He was right outside the points, I believe, when he did it. He was 16th somewhere in there, and ended up falling off and got back on and got going again. But that's why Joe ended up 30th.
Yeah, and Augusto Fernandez 22nd out of the points.
He fell right off the bat, and it was a very strange crash. It was through what they call that reverse corkscrew, and the on-bike camera that was following him, it didn't really look like he did anything specifically crazy. It almost looked like the bike bottomed out, and it kind of shook a little bit, and then next thing you know, he was sliding on the ground, but he lost the front and went over and got the bike up pretty quickly. But yeah, Greg, it was impossible for him to make it, all the way back up and through to the point scoring spots because, obviously threw it down the road. So he was still 20 seconds back of points, which was probably took him 30 or 40 seconds to get going again. So he had pace, obviously, but the whole field had gone through and that kind of thing. So he was a little bit hosed at that point.
You think this is it for Binder in terms of like they've got this thing sorted out, or do you think it was just the one racetrack situation again, though? Like the way he looks,
it just seems like it's too early to jump to conclusions, isn't it? Because it just seems like with all the chassis, especially speed up, Navarro's been up there quite a bit this year on the speed up. But you even look back a little further and you think De Gianantonio was almost untouchable at Mazzano with the exception of Fernandez, and then he ends up, finishing 15 seconds back in this race. So I believe, like what you say, I don't know if it's a one-off thing or if it's something that we'll start to see that consistency from Binder again. But he's headed to MotoGP next year, so right now he's kind of riding on a high, just trying to finish out the year and just trying to rack up wins. It's nice feeling, Greg, when you know where you're going to be the following year already. So with that said, I think that you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
it would be nice to know.
Free yeah. But I don't know if where he's headed next year might be a little bit more hard work. So he better rack up the wins while he can.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And Moto3 was kind of like MotoGP, wasn't it? Aaron Canet wins the race by 4.5 seconds over what was a really good race. The battle for second down to ninth place was incredible. And my boy, because we're tight like that, Ayogura finishes in second spot, which I found out, by the way, while we were at Jersey, Arai Helmets, they took a bunch of people over to the Arai facility, and Jeff Wheel from Arai came back, and he took a picture of a poster for me. He's like, hey, obviously I listen to the podcast, and I know you're an Ayogura fan. Well, I actually works in the Arai factory during the winter months. So he's not just a racer. He actually works in the Arai factory. And so they had like this whole poster thing dedicated to him. And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. But
pretty cool.
The way he's racing lately, as he finishes in second place behind, Canet 4.5 seconds, maybe he's not going to be working there much longer. But Foggia was in third. McPhee was in fourth. So McPhee back, just hanging around up front again. Lopez, Suzuki, Garcia, Arenas, Rodrigo in ninth, or Tony Arbolino in 10th, and then Della Porta, Jason, back in 11th place.
Yeah, that was crazy to me to see him that far back. Like you say, you sound surprised. I was too. I think the thing that catches me off in this race, and you and I spoke of it a little bit, it's when you look at a race and you think of a runaway winner, a lot of times it's kind of a yawner. But in Moto3, I think it takes something so special to pull away from everybody else. Like when you think of how close this racing is and how, we'll see a pack of 20 guys up at the front, from first to 20th, it'll be 2.7 seconds or something like that. And that's generally what we see. And Aragon lends itself to a lot of corner speed. And on these little bikes, there's quite a few places where they can get drafted, or get sucked along in the draft. So it just makes it that much more impressive to me to see Canet Greg, to win by 4.5 seconds. And I mean, it was really impressive to watch how he was just kind of clicking off the lap times and pulling away from these guys.
Well, and the biggest thing to me too, Jason, is the fact that he took advantage, Canet did, of where Della Porta ended up. So now it's only 2 points in the championship, 184 to 182. That's such a huge swing, and Canet's 2 points behind Della Porta. Della Porta's got to be looking at that race result going, crap, dude. I just seriously just gave up any comfort. I mean, thank goodness he didn't lose any more than he lost, because if he would have finished 13th place instead of 11th, we'd be tied in this championship.
And when you look at it, Greg, even worse, he was 8.5 seconds back from the winner. Well, Jakob Kornfeld finished 15th. He was 9.1. Della Porta was 0.6 seconds away from actually, you know what? He would have finished 15th because Mino, who was behind them, was another 4 seconds back. But, it was almost to the point where points were getting to that stage of maybe he wouldn't get any.
Yeah, they were scarce. They were definitely scarce.
Yeah. And you got to look at Canet. He hit the last round at Misano. His bike gave it up, and so he didn't score any points at Misano. So when you look at it, it's great to see that championship tight. Obviously, I think Moto2 still has a lot to go. These flyaway races, they go to Thailand next, Greg, and then of course they go from there to Japan again, and then Australia and Sepang, and then Valencia. So the season goes by kind of quick now. It's good for us because we don't have any racing over here really to speak of to go by.
Yeah.
So between World Superbike and MotoGP now, it'll keep us a little bit busy here at the end of the year.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's
Moto3. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you speak about the end of the year, we had our final obviously at Barber this week, and it was it was insane. I mean, we went down there. We went down there with the idea of what was this new track surface going to do. And the incredible job Dunlop did as far as building tires for this race. I know you were mentioning it quite a bit over over the weekend in our telecast. But for them to make 250 plus tires or whatever it was, Greg, in a couple of weeks to go down there, I thought that overall the weekend went great. We definitely saw a rash of incidents that I don't really think was a reflection of the track surface itself. I think it was the fact that a lot of these riders were on tires that they had not been on throughout the course of the year. Is that kind of how you feel about it?
For me, I think it's a combination. I would say probably 80% the tire and 20% the surface. I think it's a bit of a mix, but I agree with you mostly.
When you look at it, when you look at what you're saying there, I think that when you go to a smooth track and a nice surface like that, and it lends itself in your brain to think, man, I got so much grip, I don't even know what to do with it all. But the problem is that not being able to run the tires that a lot of these guys were used to running, the softer options throughout the course of the year, the grip level maybe wasn't what the tires that they were actually racing on weren't maybe what they were used to. And we saw a rash of off-throttle incidents in a number of different places around the circuit. And we saw some big ones, and we saw some of our favorites in all classes going down. So other than that, though, we came into this round 16 points in Superbike. Garrett Gerloff obviously fell out of the last round at New Jersey, so we knew he would be a player. We thought Herrin would be a player, but the championship was between Cameron Beaubier and Tony Elias. And really, Greg, after you looked at qualifying, you could kind of see how things were going to play out. Beaubier wins the first race, Gerloff second, Elias, Herrin, Beach, Gagne, Wyman, Peterson, Anthony, and then Travis Wyman top 10. But it's that 18-second difference, wasn't it, Greg, between the Yamahas and the Yosh bike that had, I think, everybody a little bit stunned.
Yeah, that was really the big thing. And you brought it up in the broadcast, and I thought, oof, that's a good point. You can't find 18 seconds in a truck overnight. And it's got to be demoralizing, to come back 18 seconds adrift. And Tony looked, he was on the box, but he looked worn out, and that's not typical for Tony. Looked like he had to work really hard at finishing 18.8 seconds back. And the reality is, Jason, that Garrett Gerloff had some good pace. Now, if you look at best times, there's no doubt Cameron Beaubier was way faster. He did a 123.871, which nearly matched his qualifying time on a special tire, on a softer tire. And Gerloff did a 24.1, but Tony Elias could only manage a 25.1. So
it's incredible, isn't it?
That race was it really was the story of two tales, wasn't it? It was Cameron Beaubier chasing down Garrett Gerloff once Josh Herrin finally had to give it up. I mean, so I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but what was interesting was all right, people that don't know the race, Gerloff ends up getting by, starts to check out of the race because Gerloff had said, look, I'm in this, to win a race. So then Tony starts to fade back. Josh Herrin gets up in front of Beaubier, starts roughing him up. Every time Beaubier passed him, Herrin went around him on the gas. I mean, just on the gas, outdrove him. So Beaubier's getting so pissed that he makes a pass in the middle of the museum corner, turn 8, which I don't know if I've ever seen that pass made before. I'm sure someone's done it.
It's a big commitment, isn't it? It's a big commitment.
I talked to Cameron and I just said, he has told me before he's made passes where I'm sure we all have, where you're on the brakes and your stomach kind of sinks and you're going, oh man, I hope this sticks. Or am I going to make it? And he said he never even thought about it. He was so pissed. He just needed to get around Herrin. And once that happened, he did it again on Sunday. So then Cam goes out and he starts to just put these laps down, Jason. And it was like, we would see our sector times. You see green, which is your personal best split from Gerloff. And then the net, as Beaubier goes by the sector 2.5 seconds behind him, all of a sudden that one's purple, outright best. And so Garrett kept sending it in different sectors during the entire race with, I think, except the last 2 laps of the race. And Beaubier just kept bettering. So you'd see like a green split from Gerloff, a purple split from Beaubier, a green one from Beaubier, and next thing you know, he's chipping away. Then that 23.8, and it was like, oh my God.
And that middle part of the race, it was insane,
unbelievable.
Wasn't it? And once he got by Herrin, he was running 24 flats. That's the crazy part when you mention lap times, because we saw Garrett did 24.1. And let's just be honest, we're splitting hairs when we say that Beaubier was a lot faster. It was 0.3. But the impressive part was, Greg, is that he ran like 5 laps of 24 flat. I mean, just kept on. It was really funny because on our screens it would go green, 24 flat, and then the next one 24 flat again and 24 flat again, and all of them were just a tick quicker than the lap prior. Then he just threw down a 23.8, and anybody that thought that there was team orders or anything on Saturday, or especially it seemed like there truly wasn't on Saturday, because for Cameron to catch Garrett was running 24 1s and 2s the same. He was just ripping laps. Cameron had to bring out the absolute best in himself, and we've seen him do it over and over. And I think the thing that's impressive to me about it is it never looks like he's going that fast. He just is.
Well, the other thing that's impressive to me, Jason, was he did it on a front tire that was so like many compounds harder than he likes. Than he won last year's championship on, and I don't think he's been off of it all year. And honestly, Friday, so Dunlop showed up with basically a medium and a medium plus. So for us, it's like a medium and a harder compound. And Cameron didn't want to get off that medium tire, even though it started to shred early on, and everybody was shredding that tire. And Dunlop had said, "Well, you're really going to have to try the harder compound tire." And he was like, by the time we got to the race, I think, or morning warm up, he'd only done like 8 laps or 4 laps on that tire. So to his credit, Jason, not only did he do those lap times, but on a tire that he was uncomfortable with, that he kept riding himself into, that's incredible. You know, it's not like he had the best gear, the best tires, like everything that just like aligned for him. He had to learn it. He had to figure it out, and they had to make adjustments. And a lot of what you're talking about, these off throttle problems that people were having, well, that, you know, to solve that problem, it was a little bit rider, but it was also the setup of the motorcycle across the Supersport class. I'm sure Stock 1000, you know a little bit more about that than I would, and Superbike, where it was violently chopping the throttle, which you can normally do in dry conditions, and the rear end would just like leave the ground, basically, like just sit on top of the asphalt and then move. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but 25-1 was the fastest lap of the race last year on the old surface with normal, compound tires.
Yeah,
we put on harder compound tires in 23.8. So there was grip somewhere.
That's just the smoothness of it all, and then going back to that battle for third with Tony Elias finishing third. I mean, his teammate this weekend, Josh Herron, really. I mean, he was a good guy. He was a good teammate. You heard Tony even thank him. Josh had pace, I felt, on Tony, and he was doing everything he could in that first race, because, I mean, it would have been very, very easy for Tony to finish 5th in that first race, and then make Sunday a lot more easy for Cameron. As it was, Cameron goes into race number 2 on the second day. What was it, Greg? 6 points back, I believe it was. 7 points back, sorry. So he goes into race 2, 7 points back, and really, when you look at the times again, that was the tell. Cameron Beaubier ends up, same thing. Just didn't seem like anything came easy this year for Cameron. Every race that I could think of, when I got on the plane the other day and I was just thinking back about the year, and over the last, let's say, 7-8 actual races, like from Utah on, every race just seemed like it was a little bit difficult for Cameron. From race 2, race 1, he had a problem in Utah. Race 2, he ends up leading most of that race, if you remember right, Greg, and then it got red flagged, and he got into a big fight with Tony in that next, and Tony came out on top. Then at Laguna, big battle again there. So Cameron really worked for this championship. He had to swallow a lot of seconds and third places that maybe otherwise could have been wins, and all the while his teammate was on a roll. Well, at the start of Sunday's race, same thing. Kind of gets into turn 1 and tries to get to the apex and realizes that Josh Herron's there. He gets pushed off, luckily, onto a little bit of curbing that was there, used to be grass, and goes all the way back to like 7th or 8th. And then it's really where you and I get to see him do his best work, when he's coming through people and how he does it methodically. And but again, his teammate had kind of checked out. But on this one, Greg, you could tell that there was some control at the front of what was going to happen. The race times were slower than they were the day before.
Yeah.
And they did what they needed to do to make sure that Yamaha got a win. Beaubier wins, Gerloff second, Matthew Skoltz, brilliant third for him. Elias comes back and forth, and what really for him was just a crazy race. He was all the way back at 6th at one point. Wyman ends up 5th. Good to see Kyle up there and Cam Peterson. Both guys were up in that battle for the podium early in the race. So it was nice to see Cam go out on a good note, finishing 6th. Was up there all weekend, and Kyle was too. Both those guys rode well. Herron, who I think, in my opinion, had the hardest job of the weekend, to just focus on his own racing, which is pretty impossible. He ends up 7th. Jake Lewis, 8th. Anthony and Max Flinders round out top 10. The second day was almost a little predictable. Tony finishes 13 seconds back after some off-track excursions, and the pace was a little slower at the front. So I really don't think that they gained anything overnight.
No, and had Tony Elias beaten Matthew Skoltz, that's all it would have been was, 3 points difference. So, Bobier would have won the championship by, I think, 2 points instead of by 5 points. So it just shows the importance, Jay. There's talks about, what's Yosh going to do for 2020? Are they coming back racing? Tony Elias, I believe, has a automatic renewal in his contract in top 3, so he's here to race. Are they going to bring back one rider, two rider? But what happened at the end of the season really showcases how important it is to have two really good teammates. And, we heard it at the banquet. I mean, I think that, Keith McCarty, who runs the whole program, basically said, look, it was a team win across the board, not just from the mechanics, engine builders, everyone else, but Garrett Gerloff had an option. He doesn't have a contract. He had an option to go out and win and put his resume, get it up on monster.com or whatever, the job board or whatever, and say, hey, I have, 6 Superbike wins or 5 Superbike wins or whatever, instead of the ones I have, and try to get himself a job. And, in 25 years, not look back on this championship and be bothered. But I just think it was very selfless. And, what was interesting, Jason, is the story started to come out about how Cameron and Garrett have been tied together for so many years. When they came in on 600s together in the Graves 600 program, and, Garrett obviously stayed on the 600s longer than Cameron Bobier, but they've been latched together and on Yamahas for many, many, many years. And, I don't think they're BFFs. Like, they don't hang out, as much as people think, but they are good friends. And I think Garrett Gerloff did a great job of playing his part. I'm not saying he gave Cameron the championship. He didn't. There's no way.
There's a respect level there. And I think that when people start looking at, you have to remember as a rider, whenever I was signed with whoever it was, tied in with manufacturers, you're basically doing a job for a manufacturer. That's what you're there to do. Yeah, you're there to win. Yeah, it's a little bit of an independent type of sport and all those things. But at the end of the day, at the end of the year, you're there in the hopes that your manufacturer wins the championship. And there was a lot of things that played out in the season, even prior to all this stuff. I mean, with Cameron, you can look back at certain things and, mistake at Sonoma. With Tony, you can look back at, obviously, the two biggest mistakes for him was Road America, when he was not that far from the finish and tosses one down the road, and the bike was too damaged to keep going to even get any points. And it was the same thing at Sonoma for Tony. So it's a lot more than just one race that decides these things. And it's a full season long. It will be interesting to see where Garrett Gerloff goes. I don't know what his plans are, but even in, his winner's interview after the race, or second place interview, and even at the banquet, he was very looking forward to see what's coming up in the future for me. So it made me feel like he's got something else rolling along.
Yeah, me too.
That might not be here, but he also did a lot of, a very respectful thing in the sense that he's been with Yamaha now for so long, and with Cameron's teammate. So I feel like it kind of all turned out great. Tony, gracious as absolute ever. I mean, the guy's such a stud. Just how he handles his business and how he handles things and how gracious he is with people. Even if it's a front, even if it's something that he doesn't want to look like the bad guy, you'd never guess it, because it really seems genuine. It seemed genuine at the banquet as well. A lot of respect for Tony Elias this year, and he put up a great fight. Both these guys did.
Some other riders could learn from how Tony handles himself in the paddock. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, no, he had a great Instagram. He had a great Instagram post today. I don't know if you saw that, but I mean, Tony did, just congratulating, and oftentimes when you ride for a manufacturer, some people are going to take the position like, I would never post something about another company or whatever. And Tony had a great post congratulating Yamaha, Cameron, everybody on the year. And I just thought, man, just it's, it's a class act. Tony's a hard racer. He's hard to race around. I understand that. Because he dives to the apexes and he's going to push you. But I just think that Tony has elevated, the racing in MotoAmerica to a point where people can turn around from other countries and look at us and say, yeah, those guys are racing really hard and they're racing fast. And I think Tony's a big part of the push that gets Cameron Bobier to go fast and Garrett Gerloff and a guy like Matthew Skoltz to show up from, race to race and figure it out. And, the speed of a Kyle Wyman. I mean, 25-1, like I said last year, I got it. It's new asphalt. But like you were saying, Jason, a huge part of what happened was harder compound tires, which obviously get people to go slower. But a guy like Kyle Wyman doing a 24-9 in a race, shows the level that we keep, elevating here in MotoAmerica, which I think is good,
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. I mean, I think that you're exactly right. It's the level keeps getting, obviously keeps getting faster. We saw lap records broke this year. I think overall it was a really fun year to call Superbike. We have great racing at the front. Really all we need to do now, Greg, is just get, like we've said in the past, get some other people involved because, it's the racing's good at the front. We've got tremendous talent over here right now. And it was fun doing that.
Now someone did comment, I think on Twitter or something, Jason, wondering why I kept saying that, JD Beach, this is his last time on a Superbike. It's primarily because that's what JD is saying, but there's a lot of factors involved. One is a rule change in flat track that I don't even know like the rule entirely, but basically you have to be, if you're going to be in the premier class, the twins class, you've got to be full time and you can't bounce in and out like JD did. And it was something I think that, the flat track folks looked at, and I think they were a bit upset that one of their stars wasn't there full time. So JD is going to be faced with some pretty tough decisions, in this offseason. The Estenson Racing, team is really a flat track team. That's where the money is, where Tommy Hayden, who's managing it, is. They are on Yamahas, but they have just poached Davey Jones, who was crew chief for Josh Herron. Davey, who's been around a long time, Jason. I mean, you've known Davey since he was a mechanic, Kawasaki, forever. And he's really smart, good guy. He is now moving over to the Estenson Racing team, and he's going to be part of that flat track effort. Working on personnel, working on making sure that, everything's right on the motorcycle, the electronic side of things over there. So, that's a real serious program. And something like that, when you add personnel to it, like a Davey Jones, it's going to be really difficult for JD Beach to walk away from that program. And he loves road racing, wants to be here. And I know he's talking to some people about doing some rides that don't conflict on a 600, because on a Superbike, too much. You can't just come in and dip your toe in. You could do it on a Supersport bike, but you can't do it on a Superbike. No way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to be too hard, and it's a lot bigger commitment on a Superbike. With a Superbike team and things, it's a lot harder to kind of drum up another bike, if you know what I mean, Greg, to put somebody on. And it is a shame. It's a shame that we've lost JD, if that is the case. Don't know that for fact, obviously. It'd be a shame, though. Love having JD as part of our paddock. He's an important part of our paddock. And then even the fact that Davey Jones is gone, that bums me out too. We've seen Davey for so many years, but maybe it was just time for a change for him. He's been in the road racing paddock for, I don't even know how many years it's been. I've literally watched him grow up. I mean, from when he came in, he was like totally looks like a kid, and and Davey's just one of my favorite people in the paddock. So he's got a new challenge ahead of him next year, and we're going to miss him as well.
And we'll continue to talk about MotoAmerica as these podcasts go on. But let's move over to Supersport now. In Supersport, we're going to give you the stuff we know. We're going to talk later about a red flag incident, blah 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 blah. But let's go ahead and give you race one, because when we rolled into the weekend, Bobby Fong was leading PJ Jacobsen by 10 points. At the end of race number one, Bobby Fong won the race by 1.4 seconds. PJ was back in 7th position with a brake issue. That was enough to give Bobby a 26-point lead in the championship with only one race to go. So he wraps it up. So it was Fong, Bryce Prince, Richie Escalante, Hayden Gillim in 4th, Sean Dillon Kelly in 5th, Corey Ventura, Jason, unbelievable, 6th place for him. Then you have PJ Jacobsen in 7th, Aguilar, McFadden, Ort, then Silva, Lampkin, Miranda, and Caleb Odom and Chuck Ivey, your last point scoring position on this one. On day number 2, it was Fong with the win. We're going to talk about that. 4.2 seconds over Escalante, PJ Jacobsen, Sean Dillon Kelly in 4th, Nick McFadden in 5th, Hayden Gillim in 6th, Aguilar, Silva, Lampkin, Nassani, Miranda, Thermiotis, Ivy, Lamoureux, and then Bruno Silva in 15th spot. Lucas Silva ended up 8th. So the weekend was dominated by Bobby Fong. I mean, that's just,
I feel like when we went into this weekend that I thought this was going to come down to the last 2 or 3 laps of the second race. I was expecting after Jersey, there was going to be fireworks. It was going to be this insane battle between a number of different guys. I knew that there was going to be some wild card people that we were going to throw into that mix. It's really how I felt. And as I'm watching qualifying on Saturday and I'm watching PJ sit on the wall, I'm thinking, obviously I could tell they were working on the brakes. And I was thinking, what is going on? This is what a horrible time of the year to all of a sudden come up with brake issues. And I don't know what it is. I know brakes have gotten better since I was racing and so on, but it just seems like now it is like a rampant thing through our paddock that people have brake issues all the time. I mean, it just seems like it's just one of those things where they creep up and people have brake issues. And it's a horrible thing to have if you've never had it. As a track day guy, I think a lot of us don't mess with brakes too much and we keep them kind of the stock and they work, and that's great. So we don't have those problems. Having brake issues while you're racing it just does wonders for your confidence level. But yeah, man, he was up there at the front was PJ on the first day, and then he just slowly went backwards. And wasn't he back to 10th or 11th at one time, Greg? I mean, he was way back.
Yeah, he was drifting way back. I want to say 11th, and then he found kind of a rhythm and picked off a few riders, but it was so far to Corey Ventura.
Yeah.
Corey was so far up the road, and PJ ends up, 27 seconds behind the leader. Corey was 13.1, nearly beat Sean Dillon Kelly, did Corey Ventura. So, you're talking, what is that, 14 seconds?
14 seconds. And Bobby really, I mean, he was never headed, was he? He just put his head down, went out, did his thing. I never saw him look back. I never saw him do anything. He was never challenged. He got pole position, got a great start, took off. And I mean, there's not a more dream scenario than to win your final, to win the race on the final weekend and win the championship, and to do it on day one. I don't think any of us would have thought that would have happened. I know I didn't think that was going to happen, that he would win the championship on day one. But he was dominant all weekend. He was fast. They just seemed like they had the bike dialed in for him. He rode well. It didn't seem like the pressure of the championship was really on him at all. I got to feel like when he went into race one that he thought that PJ would be there for sure. But I mean, other than a couple times, I think Escalante went by him. I think Escalante passed him once.
He did.
Bobby didn't even let him lead for a full lap before he got back past.
Yep.
And just didn't seem scared of anything, did he?
No, he didn't. Lap times were fast, 27.5 on day one. And then on day two, first of all, Bobby rolled into pit lane and didn't even know he'd won the championship, which is probably the best thing ever, because he's just worrying about winning a race and didn't think about the championship. And so in a way, not letting Bobby know or having Bobby unaware, I think for me is probably the best scenario as a team owner. You're going just don't let him know what's going on, because you have that big timing and score, or the big scoreboard tower that's in the middle, and riders look at that all the time. So, it's there's no way Bobby's doing the math. Wait a second, what's the point spread from first to seventh? I mean, you just know he's back there losing points. But in race two, that's where things got a bit complicated. But you take the shackles off Bobby. He goes fastest lap of the race, a half a second quicker than he had gone the day before on his M4 XStar Suzuki, right? And he actually wins the race technically by 4.2 seconds. Now, I will tell you this. It was 19 laps the first race, and they only did 14 on the second race.
There's supposed to be 19 second one as well. Yeah.
Supposed to be 19. All right. So Bobby wins, Escalante second, PJ Jacobsen third, Sean Dillon Kelly fourth, Nick McFadden fifth, Hayden Gillum sixth, Aguilar, Lucas Silva, Lampkin in ninth, Nassani in 10th, Miranda, Thermiotis, Ivy, Lamoureux, and Bruno Silva. All right. That's the way the official results are posted. What actually happened, Jason, was what?
Well, what actually happened was Bobby made a mistake. I mean, he went into turn 8 there and lost the front, got in there wide, lost the front, crashed, and the debris and stuff that he drug onto the racetrack was really the reason why the red flag came out. Bobby ran to his bike, picked it up, and rolled it back to the pits. I mean, the bike wasn't going to be able to obviously be ridden the way it was. It was not going to be able to finish 5 laps the way it was. So he rolled into the pits, and the red flag comes out. And, during the telecast, we see some jubilation from Escalante's team as they must have been told that they had won, because they were kind of all standing around wondering, is there going to be a restart? And maybe they didn't get told there was going to that they won, but they must have been told there's no restart. So pretty much from the history that I know of, if you crash and you are the cause of the red flag, that you go to the back of the grid for any restarts, or you get kind of excluded because you didn't finish. And for me, it's a frustrating scenario. It's a frustrating scenario for MotoAmerica. It's a frustrating scenario for us as commentators. And I think even as just fans, I think that the fans look at it and go, the guy crashed. You can't score him. I mean, and it insults my integrity, I think, it insults my idea of what I feel is correct when someone says that Bobby Fong didn't cause the red flag, track conditions did. Well, the track conditions were fine until Bobby Fong crashed. So the real reason for the red flag is because of the crash that Bobby Fong did, in my opinion. So I think it's a rule that I think it's definitely a rule that is going to be looked at. I don't think that anybody's going to be sitting on their hands to try to go, this is how it's going to be going into the future, because I just don't feel, Greg, like that in this particular case, the ruling was correct.
All right. Well, before I give my opinion on this, I want to know this from you, since we're going to just do this now. I was going to push it off and get this done, but we're just going to do this now. So,
okay, let's do it.
So Jay, the question is, does this incident warrant the explosion of comments on the internet?
Well, yeah, I think it does. I think it does, Greg, because, you and I talked about another rule at the beginning of the year, where Tom Sykes, there was a red flag at Donington with just a couple, 2 or 3 laps left. Tom Sykes ends up third, comes across the line, red flag. Everybody's slowing down. Everybody's doing their thing. And Tom Sykes crashes in the oil of where the incident had happened on the red flag lap coming into the pits. And they exclude him from the results simply because he can't get his bike back to Parc Fermé in 5 minutes. And I just think that there comes a point where there's such a disconnect with reality in that case, where it's like, hold on a second. And I don't care if a race director says, well, he was going too fast. That you shouldn't have gone that fast. You wouldn't wouldn't have crashed. Well, hold on a second. It's not, if I'm a race director, I'm not going to go against what Tom Sykes' best interest was. Tom Sykes wasn't trying to crash on a lap on his way in. He wasn't going at race pace, and he fell in oil. So at that point, I think that there comes a point where it's like, why? Number one, why is it important? I think there's a lot of people that want to know this question. Why is it important to get a bike back to Parc Fermé in 5 minutes? If you have a problem, what if somebody takes me out on the cool-off lap and I don't get my bike back? There's all kinds of scenarios, but we're thinking too deep into it. And in this particular case, what you see on TV is a rider who's winning, he crashes. His bike is badly damaged. Worst case scenario in this situation, I think that we could have restarted the race and done a 5-lap dash, and Bobby would have started at the back of the grid. And I don't think any of this would have ever even been an explosion at all. I think it would have been quite simple to go, But there's always going to be reasons of why we didn't do a 5-lap restart. There's always going to be reasons behind what that reasoning is. There's a lot of decisions being made. We watch those guys racking their brains over in race direction. But I think that a lot of fans, people in the paddock, that's the controversy. The one thing I'll say about it is I'm glad it didn't happen Saturday afternoon.
Buddy, you are not kidding. Yeah, that happened when a championship was on the line. I probably would have, if I was in race direction, I just would have quit. I would have quit.
I don't even know what I would have done. I would have felt bad for everybody involved. I mean, you sit there and you hear all the scenarios of people talking about, okay, so now it's okay to crash while leading a race, and as long as blah 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 blah. I mean, all the scenarios are getting drawn in, and man, as a competitor, Greg, you feel slighted. How does Bobby Fong feel about it? I think is the question that you asked me to get this thing kicked off. I think Bobby Fong is just numb to it. Like I don't think that he's going to be happy. I don't think he's going to be sad. I don't think he's going to be anything. I think he's going to feel extremely lucky, incredibly lucky, especially when he gets that first place check. But I don't really know that Bobby would have a reaction to it, Because it looked like he was pretty much in pit lane. Didn't it look to you like he was pretty much like, nah, I screwed up. He admitted to screwing up.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me go back to some things, because the one thing I can't stand are people spouting off on the internet who are completely uninformed, okay, on stuff. Number one, now, I just need to qualify this by saying, I don't care what the result is, honestly. It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with race control. I'm not MotoAmerica race control. I go by what they say, all that kind of stuff. It's horrible that Richie Escalante got an interview, that he wins his first race, all that kind of stuff, and then gets taken away. I mean, all that stuff is bad. There was a procedural error done. They should have waited for results, but it took them forever to get them anyway. It would have been just a mess. Okay. So, but I want to go back to the rules. Number one, as a competitor, if you go and sign your license and you don't know the rule book, that's your problem. It's your problem. This rule, as I'm looking at the rule book in front of me, is highlighted in the 2019 rule book. This rule that played itself out is a new rule for this year. And I'm pretty sure it's going to change for next year. I've never been involved in a race organization where we've had a perfect rule book. Normally, rules change when an incident presents itself where the rule looks ridiculous, like the Tom Sykes thing you're talking about. All right. But this is in section 1.28, which is titled Finish of a Race and Race Results. Number one, Jason, it is in section D, and it goes like this. To be counted as a finisher in a race and be included in the results, a rider must, number one, complete 75% of the race distance, okay, which Bobby did. This is the rule that plays into effect. Number two, be actively participating at the time of the red flag is displayed. At the time the red flag is displayed. For the purpose of these regulations, quote, actively competing, unquote, is defined as the rider riding on the track, comma, or attempting to repair/restart the machine, comma, or to rejoin the track or return to pit lane. Race direction will be the sole judge of whether a rider is actively competing. Okay? Then there's more stuff like crossing the line on the track, blah, 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 blah. So earlier on in the rule book, Jason, it says clearly that if you get to 75% race distance and there's a red flag, the race stops. It doesn't say it's at the discretion of the stewards. It doesn't say it's at the discretion of race direction. It says in the rule book, if it's over 75%, that the race is called. So there's your answer on that one. Now, here's the issue that I have with this. I get the rule. I read the rule. Bobby Fong was actively participating as it's defined by whatever. I'm going to go all like lawyer. 128, .D.3 or 2 or whatever it is. Okay. However, it's the last line of that rule, Jason. Race direction will be the sole judge of whether a rider is actively competing. So I understand that they went, well, if we just read the rule the way we read, the rule is da 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 da. I also get the argument that a team owner who I'm not going to name was like, they need to do the right thing. They need to do the right thing. Okay, but who in their right mind wants to be ruled by they need to do the right thing? Okay, that's just ridiculous. You've got to go by your rule book. The thing for me is that race direction will be the sole judge of whether a rider is actively competing is the way out of that rule. It's the way out of that rule. It's to say, look, we saw that bike. There were things hanging off the front of it. There was a pipe that was smashed up on the swing arm. Race direction could have easily, in my view, Jason, just bailed themselves out by saying, if the red flag didn't come out, we would have black flagged Bobby to come in. You know what I mean? Like, had the race gone on, how do you say he's a participant in the race? I get by the rule, yes. But could he have continued on? Absolutely not. I mean, that bike was, you get what I'm saying?
If there wasn't dirt on the track, Bobby would have been in pit lane. The race would have continued, and that would have been the end of it.
Right. So this whole thing, I don't know how this whole thing came up about who caused the red flag, who didn't cause the red flag. You know what I mean? Like, for sure, we heard it. You and I heard it. We were up in the area. We heard someone say, who was not involved in the decision, by the way, it was the dirt that caused the red flag, not Bobby Fong. Okay. So, I get it.
Where does the rule come from, right, Greg? Like, where does the rule, Like our rule book, our
rule book comes from rules that are put forth in World Superbike. The rule book is owned by the AMA/FIM.
Correct.
It is not a MotoAmerica rule book. It is not MotoAmerica making these decisions. It is MotoAmerica Race Direction that's involved, that's reading a book that is not written by them either.
Correct.
And
I want to make sure that that's clear to people out there, because it's not like MotoAmerica came along and goes, well, okay, we're going to write our own rule book and this is what we're going to do. We are going based off of FIM World Superbike rules, and this kind of stuff gets implemented into our series. This is a situation that might never come up again. I mean, I've never seen it. I've never seen anything like this before. I understand the passion that's driven behind everybody else and how people feel wronged by it. I get it all. I really honestly get it all. It's a rule that I think needs to be changed, whether that happens or not. I'm with you, Greg. I'm a bit impartial because we have a job to call the races. The hardest part for you and I at the end of that race was we just didn't know what was going on, and our Fox show was starting for Superbike. That could have been the reason as well. Of why they didn't run the 5-lap restart. It's easy for me. It's so easy for me and for you and for others to say, yeah, but there was an injustice, and the Superbike race might have to start 5 minutes late. We need to get this other thing sorted and finished before we go forward. I just don't like it when somebody tells me that Bobby Fong didn't cause the red flag. That's where I get more bummed out.
Yeah. That it's the dirt that causes the red flag. That's the old analogy. What caused the pregnancy? The sperm or the sex?
Yes.
Technically,
yes.
it was, and I've said that to you before, and it's like,
I've laughed at you before about it. Yes,
I know, and I get it all, but that's not even that. The thing is that that's not even coming into question. The whole rule and why Bobby Fong wins the race is because on a red flag, you revert back to the last completed lap by everyone in the field. And race direction deemed that Bobby Fong was an active participant in the race, which means he's still viable in the race. Now let's go back to VIR, Jason, okay? Because the difference is that Bobby Fong knew this rule, okay? So we go to VIR, Bobby Fong crashes, and he lays down. Remember that?
Oh, I remember.
The moment he laid down, race direction said, you are no longer an active participant in this race.
Well, let's stop and go back just real quickly. He crashed, got up, walked, and then laid back down again.
Right.
And the reason why they felt like he was no longer an active participant in my eyes was, number one, they thought there might have been a little bit of gamesmanship, which I even said during the telecast. Number one, okay. Number two, the corner worker, when they came over to Bobby and he didn't answer right away, it automatically put him in the concussion protocol. Okay, so at that point, MotoAmerica, they had the authority to deem him as not a participant anymore, because when he laid back down and he didn't really answer the corner worker, they were a little bit concerned. Because if you remember, we had a delay in our start because the first doctor that came in didn't get all the information. They were like, oh, yep, let him go. He can go race. The second, and then it was like, hold on a minute. He's in concussion protocol. And so he essentially was not allowed to restart. That was the deal.
So he's been through that. So he's been through that rule, 128D.2. Okay, he's been through that rule. Now he crashes. The championship's over. There's a couple laps left in the race. The motorcycle looks pretty beat up. And you and I are both kind of looking at each other thinking to ourselves, why is Bobby Fong running after his motorcycle and trying to get this thing mounted? We've seen kids in lap 2 of Junior Cup crash and let the corner workers clean up their mess, right? Which drives both of us crazy. But here's Bobby going after it. I'm like, wait a second. He can't win the race if they don't red flag it, because he was, 3/4 of the field probably went by him while he was trying to get ready or whatever it was. And there's no championship on the line. He's got that rep up. Why is he going after that motorcycle? My view is because he knows the rule. He knew that he needed to be an active participant. So,
I don't think that. I don't think Bobby jumped up and went, oh, hold on a minute. Like, I'm going to get, I can still win the race.
I was told by someone on the M4X Star Suzuki team that Bobby knew that rule.
He might know the rule. He might know the rule, but there's no way that you can tell me that Bobby knew that by him picking up the bike, if it got red flagged, he was going to be deemed the winner.
No, definitely not. But you can't tell me, Jason, that if you have such a lead that you think if this thing gets red flagged, I need to take my grid position on the restart. Because in the old days, it used to be if you caused a red flag, you'd have to start from the back of the grid, hands down, no questions, everybody knew it. Well, that's now changed because if you cause a red flag, but you're an active participant or whatever, you can actually start from your original grid position. We have seen that over, like we've seen it done where oh, wait a second, you and I have been on a broadcast going, wait, are they supposed to start? Wait, hold on, they're rolling up to the front. Wait, where are they going?
Yep.
Causing confusion. So at least that part of it where he may be thinking, okay, I don't know, the 75% rule, or I don't know, are they going to restart it? Well, by the rule book, they weren't allowed to start it because, like I said, it clearly says in the rules that at 75% race distance, the race is over. Not that it can possibly start a race. It's like 75%. If there's a red flag, the race is over. So that's at least the way I read it today. So yeah, I'm thinking to myself, okay, Bobby knows something. Like he's on the hustle because he understands the rule book. And the other thing that kind of got complicated was during a riders meeting, they said race direction for some unknown reason. I have no idea why they decided to make up rules all of a sudden. But if you exceed track limits in turn 8, meaning if you run across the grass, that's considered a competitive advantage and you're going to get a time penalty. So part of the protest was let's go ahead and file and say, oh, Bobby ran off the track and he got an advantage, so he'll get a time penalty, so he'll finish back anyway. That was kind of a Hail Mary. I get it. But this whole track limits thing is a little beyond me. We've been coming here since what, Jason? 2003?
Running on the grass in that spot is not going to help your lap time.
No, I'm not aware of it.
So in any way possible. I don't. And we see that throughout racing now. And see, the problem, I not even a problem, but the thing I don't understand is where the rules come from. Okay, so where I like to think I watch a lot of racing, and I think you do too. We watch everything. I literally watch as much as I possibly can. In my right mind, I have never, ever, ever thought to myself, well, the race got red flagged and that guy fell on the red flag lap, so automatically he doesn't get to, if he can't get his bike back to Park Fermi, he's excluded. I don't even know of a scenario of why that rule is written. I don't know. It's beyond me. Powers that have made that rule. I think the problem I have is I just, our job, MotoAmerica's job. I guarantee you that even though we have a bunch of guys in race control, none of them want to be known who they are. They all want to they want the races to go by as clean and as perfect. And let's just be honest. For the better part of the 4 or 5 years that we've been doing this, I can't honestly think of another scenario where I've gone like, wow, that was maybe not the right, let's just say. And like you said, there's never going to be a perfect rule book. I think MotoAmerica runs an amazing championship. I think they've continued to get better. But this was kind of, I wish our series wouldn't have been the one that had to learn this kind of lesson almost, like, I don't know if I can't honestly say that I've ever heard this happening before where somebody has tipped off. I just don't know.
Even if this happened, say to World Superbike or BSB, and this rule was in their rule book in the middle of the year, if we had it in our rule book, you're not going to amend it in the middle of the season anyway. It's got to sit there. So I have a hunch, I have a sneaking suspicion that there'll be an additional verbiage or, something is going to change for that particular rule, because I don't feel that there's anyone out there, not even Team Hammer, the Ulrich family who own that team. I don't even think say that's the right thing to do. The guy crashes, caused a red flag. He deserves to win the race. It's not logical. But with the way the rule book is written, I understand the direction that I'm not saying it's right. Don't anybody get all fired up now, but I'm saying I get it. If you're going to live by the rule book,
they did what the rule book said
had
to be done. And that's the only thing that you can look back on and go,
okay.
And really, Greg, I want to go back to the focal point of this. The championship was done on Saturday. Bobby Fong did what he needed to do. That guy put in incredible rides at the end of the year. Yep. I feel the right guy won the championship no matter what. The right guy won the championship. This thing on Sunday was a one race incident that hopefully we can get better what's the word I'm looking for?
A better handle on for next year.
Better handle on for next year. It's something that I know that MotoAmerica is going to be proactive with and look at that rule again.
It's a blip on the radar, Jay, right?
It's just a blip on the radar.
It's a hiccup.
At the end of the day,
no big deal.
At the end of the day, Bobby Fong was a very deserving champion this year.
Yes.
I can only hope that we see PJ back. I think Sean Dillon Kelly is going to be incredible. Who knows? Maybe you and I during the offseason will do a little special, some sort of special who we thought was great type of year in review or something, because I think Sean Dillon Kelly deserves a big round of applause for his year. It was a lot of fun. Let's move to let's move over to the Liqui Moly, Greg, where we'd already crowned our champion at the previous round in New Jersey. Rocco Landers was I think the stat that you give that is just insane to me is that there's 425 points available, and he's got 375 of them. He had 14 wins, 15 podiums. He went, down the list of the stats. He was head and shoulders above everybody this year. He goes ahead and wins again both races, does the double. This weekend, though, I think it was impressive in the first race, specifically seeing Dominic Doyle ran with Rocco, battled with Rocco. Rocco passed him on the last lap, again showing us that he's kind of a little bit unflappable maybe, and he can plan his races. Dominic finishes second in the first race, and then they had a big battle between Jackson Blackman, Benjamin Glotty, Jigalov, and Gage Reese, along with Liam Grant. They all battled for third, and so that was third through seventh. Karin Agura, Greg, she ends up eighth, and then Jacob Stroud, Cody Wyman finishes 10th. Then we had Colstedt, Hobbs, Jones, Knowles, Toby Kamsuk, where they rounded out the finishers, on the first day. On day two's results, again, Rocco just kind of on day two got a great start. Dominic didn't get as good a start, but Dom kept him honest, ends up 3.1 seconds back. So Dom did the second place double for the Bart Conn Racing team. But this day, Greg, the battle for third was a long way back, 18 seconds back to Glotty, who gets his first podium. Youngest guy in our series, I believe, isn't he, Greg? Right?
He is,
I think
yes.
Benjamin along with Rocco, both 14. Flores, Rees, Blackman round out the top seven, and then Jigalov. They were all battling again from third all the way back to Damien at eighth. Teague Hobbs, Cody Wyman, Grant, Burleson, Agura ends up 13th. Rodeo and Kolstad top 15. What are you taking away from the Liqui Moly class on the weekend?
Karin Agura needs to be on a Kawasaki, number one. No, but
yes, she's good.
She is good. She's very good. And Cody Wyman had a good run the second day on the Yamaha. So she was the first Yamaha. It was the rest of it was Kawasaki's. On day one, Cody was day two on the Yamaha. But obviously Rocco, I mean, the only thing is with Rocco is the cool thing is if he goes off to Europe next year and he gets back and does a couple wild card rides, we'll be able to see not just from the lap times, because things do change from year to year, different conditions and stuff like that. You can't always just go on lap times from year to year, but we'll be able to see if the field's able to step up. My fear is for Junior Cup that with Rocco gone and no carrot right now, who is going to be the carrot next year? Who's going to step up? Is it going to be Kevin Olmedo on the regular? Is it going to be this kid Ben Glotty? Because he's whatever. He came in a little past halfway point of the season, I think.
Yeah.
Because the only reason he did was, like you were saying, he turned 14. When this season started, he was 13. When this season started for Rocco, he was 14, and a couple of days old or something, like 22 days or something. I think his birthday's in February. I think February is his birthday. So let's see. Ben Glotty came in and he scored his first points at round 7. So that would have been Utah. So that was his first
I remember him being there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him being there, yeah.
So that's the question.
Yeah.
Who's going to come back? Who's going to be able to do what? There is a big concern about the backing behind the Quarterly Racing on-track development team. There's money behind that. Is he going to stay around? The money behind that, Dale will find a way to come to the races. So, in what at times we've seen him with. Has he had 5? I'm for sure he had 4 racers this weekend. Quarterly on-track development.
I always remember 4 kind of. I don't know if he ever had 5. He might have.
Yeah, but I think 4 a weekend. I mean, that's great. So hopefully Dale will be back. He loves working with young riders and developing them. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy. Did Dale Quarterly says excuse me, things in front of parents that I think that most parents don't want to hear back in 2005. But Dale does it. He gets away with it. And I think some parents are this day and age, of course, being PC and how dare you say things about my kid. But the parents are in it. And Dale obviously is doing a good enough job where he's getting results. I'd have to go back and look. I mean, I think Quarterly Racing on track development was probably had one rider on the podium almost at least half the races, if not maybe 75% of the races this year.
For sure. Yeah. Good. Yeah. They have good riders, a good team, good group over there, obviously putting the bikes together and so on. So yeah, it'll be interested. I don't know what Dominic's going to do yet next year. And I've heard murmurs of Almeida moving up, possibly. Really? And so on. So yeah, but that's kind of the funnest part about Junior Cup for me and commentating on it is seeing who moves up and see who goes forward. I mean, we talked about Corey Ventura today, and Corey to me was, I think his stars shine pretty bright there at Barber. When at the beginning of that 600 race, the first one, Greg, I'm like, is that Corey Ventura like running in fifth? He was right there, and we need to see these guys advance. We need to see the Liqui group advance and go forward. I think that there's going to be a number of the Liqui kids from this year. I heard a lot of people talking about going to the twins class next year. I mean, the twins class is going to be, again, next year. I think it'll be pretty gnarly. I think you're going to have a lot of young guys in that class as a stepping stone up to 600s and so on. So yeah, the Liqui class definitely serves its purpose. I think the racing's fantastic. And when you see a guy do what Rocco did this year, you got to kind of sit back and appreciate it. You can't look at it in a sense of, oh man, one guy's dominating. This kind of sucks. It's like, this is a guy at the beginning of his career. It's kind of exciting to watch and see somebody that young do so well.
It was interesting at the banquet when his dad Stoney was up there talking, and he just made a little comment that said, Rocco needed this year. Like, because he was in Europe and I think he wasn't really clicking with all of it. And, we could see Rocco take this speed and go off to Europe, whether that's going to be Red Bull Rookies Cup. I think he's trying out for that in a couple months or a couple weeks or whatever, or he goes and races in that European Cup series with the Moto3 bikes. Whatever it is, this year in MotoAmerica could be the year that just gets him to the next level, because we know how much talent is around in Spain and Italy because they've been, having these kids on pocket bikes since they're 3 years old and racing road race stuff. So, and I also think it's great that Rocco was here, developing a little bit of a fan base. He did the things. He got out there. He was, showed up in a gold glittery suit and had some fun with all of us. And so it's good that he's, developing a little bit of a fan base. So
yeah.
Also, Junior Cup's going to be good. It's going to be our biggest movers, I think, in terms of silly season. Who's going to do what, who's going to move where, and everything else. But let's move to Stock 1000, where Andrew Lee was yet again already crowned national champion. And that Kawasaki rider on the Franklin Armory Graves Kawasaki did the double, won a couple. First one by 3.3 over Michael Gilbert, and then 5.5 the next day. I love watching, no matter how much crap I've given Andrew Lee, which it really isn't much, but we definitely go after each other. And on the banquet,
everywhere,
the banquet though, he was pretty rough, which I enjoyed. I definitely enjoyed it, but he's so fun to watch ride a motorcycle. He's not, losing the front and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. He just is like methodical. He's like a surgeon. He just does, because the first race, Michael Gilbert got out front and was setting a pretty good pace. And then, I turned my head and had to do some stuff. And the next thing you know, Andrew Lee's taking the checkered flag by 3.3 seconds. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Like what just happened, right? Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What did you take away from
Andrew's
the weekend
right now,
of the year?
The thing about Andrew is he's a little bit like Rocco in the way that he rides all the time. Andrew's always on a bike because he does AFM. So he's during this middle part of the year, I think when you look back to, after Road America, the guy didn't lose a race. I mean, he went to Utah and literally from Utah out, he's just won. And it is the thing that you mentioned about how he's very methodical. He puts this undeniable pressure on everybody, but he never looks like he's trying to. He just does it. He just goes out there and grinds out the laps and puts them down and goes 26 flat the first day, which is really fast. I mean, these are just 1,000 Superstock bikes. This class to me was fun to watch this year because we got more riders. We got riders from other disciplines we got riders from other classes come over, and then we had we had some guys step up, and then we had like Jeff May come in, so added some validity to it. So when Andrew can at the end of this year look back and go, hey, I won the championship, he did it against a bunch of different guys and he dominated it. And he's another guy, Greg, that's kind of won in a lot of different ways. We've never really seen him get a bad start, but we've seen him have to go through people and get to the front. We've seen him win last lap battles. We've seen him follow guys for the majority of the race and plan things. We've seen him do all that. So it'd be fun to see Andrew on a Superbike.
Superbike.
Yeah, it would be fun to see him on one of those. I mean, because I think that once you get on 1,000, even though this is kind of an introductory kind of 1,000 class for us, when you get a guy that did what Andrew did this year, if you own a Superbike team, you've got to at least think in your mind, man, I gotta put this guy on our bike.
Well, the fundamentals of it, Jason. The fundamentals of a stock 1,000 versus a Superbike, I would think are very similar in terms of get the bike turned, get it up on the meat of the tire. It's not like you take a stock 1,000 and ride it like a 600. It's still 1,000. You still have to do similar things you're going to do on a Superbike. So that's where I'm sitting there going like, yeah, of course they translate.
Yep, absolutely. They're going to translate. And the other thing that you can't take away is the crew that he had around him, along with Derek Keyes. There were and some other vital people that were there. He's got great people around him. He's got Chuck Graves obviously behind him when he goes and does all the AFM stuff. So the knowledge that he gets from going and doing those races carry over into our MotoAmerica series. So he did a great job. I mean, he did a great job on the weekend, did a great job on the year. Michael Gilbert, coming back from his crash at Pittsburgh, he wasn't able to race at Jersey. He wanted to. He went there, just still really wasn't feeling very well. He ends up second on both days, which was great. And Stefano Mesa, I mean, it was so neat to see how many people at the banquet were so pumped for Stefano to finish second in the championship. And let's not forget that I think that this championship, well, there's not a question in my mind, this championship would have come all the way down to the final weekend had he not had his incident with Michael at Pittsburgh, because Stefano was very consistent this year. Tons of podiums, ran up front, won a race. I mean, did everything he needed to do to put himself there. And I can only hope that he comes back again next year.
So glad Michael Gilbert is okay from that crash, but he's still going to go down as a legend in my book, as the only guy that I know who crashed someone out with his face. I'm telling you. All right. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, I think that you're right. It's just one of those things where, I was just glad he didn't get hurt worse. But I'm looking forward to that championship again next year and seeing who might just dip their toe into the 1,000 Superstock class. Let's get to the Twins class, Greg. This championship was coming all the way down to the line this year. It was pretty simple for Alex Dumas as far as what he needed to do coming into this race. He had a 21-point lead. He essentially had to finish. Even if he didn't finish, Drake Beecham, who's had a tremendous year in his own right, was going to have to win the race to get that 25 points. Anything less, second place would have put him a point shy. So Alex was in a good spot. Basically go out and try to win the race, do what you can, and go from there. At the end of the day, Alex did cross the line first. He made I'm sure the last thing that all the guys from Race Direction at MotoAmerica wanted to do was to, just a couple hours after Supersport was to try to come down with a penalty for Alex in Liqui but by the rule, you're allowed so many maneuvers as far as I think it's 2 maneuvers, Greg, and Alex made a third maneuver to break a draft that he really didn't need to do because there was nobody that was drafting him anyways. MotoAmerica got this one right. We've seen this consistent as far as some of the stuff that they've done in the past. Jamie Astudillo comes to mind on her way to the finish line at Utah. Same rule applied here. So Alex got a second penalty, so that dropped him from first to third. Chris Parrish, our defending champion, got his first win of the year, which I was super stoked on to see him win. Michael Barnes second. Yep, Michael Barnes second. And then Alex third. Chris Turner right on the back end of these guys the whole race. He ends up fourth. Beecham, who ends up getting second in the championship, ends up fifth in this race. Then we had Murray, Jackson Blackman, McDonald. Joe Blasius came back from injury.
Hold on. It's Joe Blasius.
Blasius.
All right. Because I ran into him. I ran into him at the banquet, and I apologized to him up and down. The way you pronounce it is actually proper. It's the proper Lithuanian pronunciation.
Got it.
According to them, according to Joe, it's Blasius. And I was like, dude, how can you not tell us for these couple of years that it's Because I mean, what a race name, right? Blasius.
Yeah.
So
great.
I meant to say that earlier, but so I apologized up and down. You know what I mean? He's like, "No, don't worry about it." I'm like, "Yeah, we worry about it."
No, we want to know. I mean, I know you are a stickler on that, so
I tried it.
Yeah, so it's great. Madama ends up 10th. Adams, Lilligard, Christian Crossland, 13th. Ned Brown and Jerry Reeves rounded out the top 15. We had 43 entries, Greg. We had a ton of people there that were trying to qualify for this race.
I think only 33 made it because of the times that were set up front were so fast.
Yeah. Well, that's what's going to happen, though, right? I mean, you're going to see when you start getting some of that young blood coming up from the Liqui Moly class into this, the pace is going to get faster. So I think there's a lot of people that thought, oh, I'm going to go do twins and it's going to be great. And all of a sudden they get there and go, oh shit, these guys are going a lot faster than I thought they were going. Track was pretty busy. But I think overall, again, this class was another one that MotoAmerica started last year. Weren't really sure the direction it was going to go. I think it's gone a nice direction. I think that the racing's been great. I mean, the racing actually at the front's been really good. But yeah, Alex ends up winning the championship, final race of the year. M4 X-Stars, second championship of the weekend, 2 out of 5 MotoAmerica championships for them this year. So it'll be interesting to see where Alex ends up next year because that's still up in the air. And it'll be interesting to see if Barney comes back and all that stuff too.
All right. So there's something I have to get out here, Jay, because I don't know how to say this because I don't want to give too much away, but I heard a possibility of where an Alex Dumas might go race next year, but I've also heard that there's a hurdle for him to get there. Okay. Not a financial hurdle, but a rule hurdle. And so I'm sorry to be so vague, everyone, if you're listening. It really kind of doesn't matter because I don't know if it's 100% true, but this is what I know to be true. Alex Dumas rides an SV650 for Road Racing World Young Guns. Stock. Now, they're modified, but in stock trim, an SV650 makes 75 horsepower, an estimated 75, like a that's in the thing. A Kawasaki ZX-10, for instance, a 2017 model, makes 210 horsepower. So stock to stock, 75 to 210. What I really want to just get out there is that the time that Alex Dumas did in the race, okay, bear with me, Jason. He did a 1 minute 32 second lap time, 1 minute 32.077. That was Alex Dumas' lap time on a modified SV650. That time was faster than 15th through 19th in stock 1000 class.
Got it.
Okay?
Yep.
That's all I'm going to say about that. That's all I'm going to say about that. Just all right. Now,
I think I kind of got your gist of where you're going with this all. So yeah,
I'm just saying.
No.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just saying. And by the way, in 2 championships for Dumas, Jason, how many races has he crashed out of in 2 national championships?
One? I know he fell a couple of times last year,
but
Jersey, I think, was one, and the other one was MotoAmerica. So he doesn't fall very often.
Didn't fall at all this year, did he? In race?
Nope. Nope. He fell in practice, I think, at VIR because he damaged his finger and he didn't ride. But he didn't race. He didn't ride there. He got a national level dirt track license, and he's always riding. I mean, look, I literally just got a text message 15 minutes ago while we're doing this podcast, and from Dad, and they're almost to Chuckwalla because he's coming to race Chuckwalla this weekend. So, and I think that there's a lot of our riders from MotoAmerica that are coming to race CVMA during the winter series. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, man, everybody's like, Jay, you finally get a break. Everything's going to be good. And I'm like, no, because there's a whole series starting this weekend that I'm a bit of a part of at CVMA out there. And so my year doesn't stop because that championship goes all the way through.
By the way, Rocco Landers says he claims he's from Bend or something like that, right? Bend, Oregon or something like that. But he spends a tremendous amount of time at Chuckwalla, like in Southern California.
Oh, yeah. He's always out there.
All right. So I get the Oregon thing, but really he's a SoCal guy. I mean, he's a SoCal kid. So if you look at it, 4 of our 5 national champions, all the Americans who won national championships, they're all from California, and 3 of them from NorCal. Yo, what's up with that? You got Bobby Fong, NorCal. You got Andrew Lee, Cameron Bobier.
NorCal.
You're right.
Yeah.
You got Rocco, who's whatever, Cali, Oregon. And then you got this French kid or French-Canadian kid named Dumas. By the way, it's Dumas, ladies and gentlemen, not Dumas.
Who's coming out to California to race?
Of course he is.
Oh, winter.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right.
So he's a transplant now.
Listen, wrapping this up, because we're going to talk about MotoAmerica, I'm sure, all winter long, but just outstanding season all across the board. I thought MotoAmerica did a good job, not being a fanboy, but I thought they did a good job overall of managing, all the different stuff, all the demands that people have, all the rules people want changed, all the specialty. I deserve this, I deserve that. I thought it was a great season overall. I thought racing was fantastic. Championships coming down to the wire was awesome. Just totally happy. Obviously, the new coverage with the MotoAmerica Live Plus app and blah, 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 blah. We saw during the banquet, the popularity is on the rise of MotoAmerica. So haters going to hate, but MotoAmerica is doing a good job in year 5. I thought they were outstanding. Way to keep the pulse of motorcycle road racing going, seriously.
No, and Greg, you hit it on the head. You're 100% right. I'll share a quick one with you, but I had after the banquet, we had like a 4:30 a.m. wake up call. So Michael and I went back to the hotel and this and that, and we got like a 5 o'clock Uber ride to the airport. And generally, when you're on those flights in the morning, what are you always thinking? I can't hardly wait to get on it and go to sleep.
Oh yeah,
and
you are. Yeah, I can't sleep on a plane.
I am. I wanted to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm in line, and guess who's in line right in front of me? Richard Varner. So I'm like, man, they let anybody on these planes. Ends up him and I sit next to each other and talk for the 2-hour flight all the way to Denver, and it was so great just getting to know him even more. I know, poor Rich. He probably was like the same. Like, wish Pridmore would shut up so I could go to sleep. But no, we had great conversation about the year. I mean, it's amazing, how invested he is in our championship, how much he really cares. I mean, he's always out on the grid, wishing every rider the best before the start of every race. No, I think MotoAmerica's, honestly, I really feel like they've done a great job this year. And with Fox coverage, and all of our guys in the TV truck were amazing this year. We had a lot of fun with them.
Yeah, we did.
And it was the whole season was amazing. So
the other thing, hold on, before we move on, the last thing I'll say about this is this is what I know anyway. You had Kevin Schwantz at the race this weekend. Scott Russell showed up. We saw Trip Noble sighting. Haven't seen Trip since 2012, right?
Love it.
You tell me the series is getting that good where it's starting to get guys that haven't been, that are ex-riders, ex-champions show up. I mean, this is just, it's everything points to it getting healthier and it being healthy. So I kind of said to myself, kind of laughing at it, like, yeah, I got it. Like these guys are all coming back because they're seeing that the popularity is on the rise too.
And the crowd, we had such a good crowd at Barber again. And I just think overall, we've got our calendar out. We're going to 2 new venues next year. Indianapolis, I hardly wait to go there. I got to be honest. I know we're going to the Ridge. I've been to the Ridge. I like the Ridge. That's going to be a fun place. They're putting a lot of money into the track to make it MotoAmerica raceable. They've done a nice job. And Indianapolis, Indianapolis, I just haven't been there to see motorcycles go around. I've been to the museum. So those are 2 new venues for MotoAmerica.
So when I got to test a bike at Indy, which was the
EBR,
1190 RX, I was doing it for my little Greg's Garage video stuff that I did. So someone actually asked me like, hey, are you going to post like a complete lap, an onboard lap around there? So I'm like, yes, I will do that. But what do you think? Should I speed it up like 15%? Maybe should I?
No, you should start it now so that by the time we get there, the lap will be finished.
Man, this is where I wish I had like an effect on the thing where I could just like hitting keys, like bing, you know what I mean? Just like the 5
just
key.
Block me out.
Yeah, you're such a all right, let's kind of get this thing going. Let's wrap it up, I guess, Jay. But before we do, World Superbike back in action at Magny Cours. Tell us about Magny Cours racetrack, because I know that you've done some races there in the past.
Rain. Always going to rain. It's going to rain at some point every year. Magny Cours. Doesn't matter if it's middle of summer. Doesn't matter if it's middle of winter. It's going to rain at some point. So, I think that Magny Cours is an interesting track. Wouldn't say it's one of my faves that I've ever been to. It's got. I love the first 2 turns there. That really is about it.
Really?
Yeah, really stop and like first gear corners and just. I don't know. It's not
Johnny Ray's had great success there. He's had five wins. Haga's had 5. Like in terms of active riders, I think Sykes has 3. Chaz has 3. Marco Melandri has 1.
Yeah.
Bautista, what do you think about Bautista's move to HRC? That was finally announced.
Yeah, kind of. It's a weird situation. I'm a little skeptical on the ideas that it was just as easy as him deciding to move on. I think that Ducati had already printed all the shirts and all the posters of their 2019 Superbike champion. And then, like we've discussed, it's maybe the worst I've ever seen as far as like somebody just collapses that hard. I don't know Bautista. He seems like an awesome guy, so I don't want to badmouth him. But when you go out and you win the first 11 races, it balls a little bit in your court, and maybe use a little bit better judgment and not, crash however many times. Was he crashed like 6 times or something, 6 times, and just handing points back? Now he's 91 points deficit, and I read this morning that and he said this morning, or I saw a thing on. It was either Crash.net or Bike Sport or one of them, but basically he said, now I'm really going to focus on trying to catch Johnny in the next 3 rounds. And I'm thinking, okay, well,
right.
Good luck with that. Him being on a Honda next year, being on a Honda though next year definitely makes me feel like Honda's serious, right? I mean, you got to think that now they're coming back and really making an effort. I feel bad for some of the guys like Gagne and Camier, who I really like. They even Nicky, they spent years on that bike when it was just not that good. And now Honda's coming back full spot.
If you remember back to when Nicky signed up, the first press photo that they had out was in HRC, which is Honda Racing Corporation. That's their, racing arm. They had HRC livery on the thing. He had HRC leathers on there. And as the season started, the whole thing changed. So it was like, I think when Nick signed on to that team, it was supposed to be the full-blown HRC effort that they're going to come with now. I think that Honda is at the point where they're embarrassed. They're finally looking at World Superbike saying, hey, I think we're embarrassed. We need to do something, because there will be MotoGP faces in World Superbike next year working on that program. So, but also, Jay, for this, don't forget World Supersport. There's only 10 points in that championship between Krummernacher and Caricasulo, with Jules Cluzel back there, like another 40-something points. And in World Supersport 300, you have Manuel Gonzalez, who's got, 128 to Daru's 90? You know what I mean?
So he's got like finished, doesn't he, this weekend?
Yeah, basically, I think so. So World Supersport's pretty exciting. So we'll be talking about that on the next podcast. So check that out. That's on beIN Sports. I believe beIN Sports is still around. I'm not entirely sure, but for those that actually get it, I think it's there. Or just go buy it. Just go to the website and buy it. Also, Jay, we've got to send a shout out to Briar Bauman, who won the number 1 plate in American Flat Track over the weekend. Jared Mees won the race, and I thought Mees did a cool thing. He actually, they're both on Indian motorcycles and stuff. Mees had the number 1 plate on his bike, obviously won the race. Bauman got on the back, and they did kind of a victory lap together, champion and race winner, handing him kind of the number 1 plate. So I texted with Mees this morning. He's definitely fired up about trying to get that thing back next year.
Perfect. Yeah, strange year for him. It seemed like this year, like a lot of little weird things happening, and yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's one of those things when you look across, you say, look, that happens in racing. And that's why I think if we go back to MotoGP, the extraordinary things that Marc Marquez has been able to do over the last 6 years is, I mean, you can have all those problems, but whatever. But Bauman had just a string of of podiums during the course of the year. He had a couple bad finishes mid-season, but almost all of his finishes were with 5 wins. Like Mees had 7 wins on the season, like you're talking about, Jay. Briar Bauman has 5. I mean, heading into the last one, which is this weekend up in New Jersey in the Meadowlands. But yeah, it's a good American flat track season, and I look forward to see what happens next year. All right, anything you want to say on the way out? Is it's funny because you and I started this going, all right, we're both exhausted. Let's go ahead and just kind of be quick. And now we're like an hour and 40 minutes into this. Is probably one of our longest ones ever. But what do you want to say on the way out?
We covered a lot of stuff. No, I mean, great. A lot of fun. MotoAmerica Championship. A lot of fun this season. Looking forward to seeing what the offseason brings and where some riders are going to go, where they're going to end up. I hear so many things, Greg, that kind of are out there, as do you. And it'll be interested to see how it goes. And out to CVMA this weekend. And I'm going to be hot on it for the next couple months, and then hopefully have a surgery on my ankle.
Love it, dude. There's a lot to be decided this off season with MotoAmerica and a lot of other things. So we'll definitely keep this thing going. We're going to be keeping you up to date each week. Even if we come on and say there was no racing this week, we won't talk to you till the next week, but we'll be on and keep doing this thing. So thanks for checking us out. Thanks for listening. Check out our social media. If there are things that you want us to talk about during this off season, interviews you want us to try to get, feel free to reach out to us on social media. And, with your requests, some topics that you want to talk about as well. I will warn you, though, and I think, Jason, you'll back me up on this. There are things that Jason and I know from talking to people that we just won't share because we don't want to burn up anybody's plans for the next year and blow any deals. But if there's things that we can tell you, we will. Fair enough, right, Jay?
Fair enough.
All right. See you guys later.